begin, I just want to express my thanks to the Rav, the Moira the Asla, for giving me the zchus, the privilege to be able to come and speak here, not just now, but on several occasions. And in particular to Aryeh Sonnenberg, who was really together, and my dear friend Denny Simon and Baron Minkoff, who do so much being a diva slave in order to put these shurim together. My appreciation and deep hakar satoiv to everybody concerned. One of the keys to success in davening is making sure that you see the sequence of one passage to the next. One of the great hazards of monotony and boredom in davening is that you have something like occasional spurts of inspiration. Maybe when you come to Ashrei, you suddenly wake up, there's Ashrei. Or you suddenly realize, there's Krias Shema. And all of a sudden you're at Aleinu L'Shabeach. And maybe at different points during the tefillah, you have a certain hisoyrevus at staggered points. And it's not a key to success, because you don't see the sequence which runs through from one section to the next. Perhaps it's a little bit like if you read a book and you read chapter 1 and then you jump to chapter 5, and then you go to chapter 3, and then you go to chapter 10. You didn't get the sequence. You can't pick up the beauty of the book. It goes from the beginning until the end. If you catch the sequence, if you understand what is behind the chokhmah of Anshe Knesset Hagdolah and the Siddur, it's a little bit like a tapestry. You begin at one side, and when you walk away, you have what's a stunning view, because you've got the whole thread. You went right the way through from beginning until end. We get a glimpse of this from the Chayei Odom in Klal Kof. The Chayei Odom brings down that there were 4 sections of tefillah. The first is olam hazeh, which is from the beginning of brachas, Birchas HaShachar, until Baruch She'omar. It's all to do with olam hazeh, and for that you use your guf, your body. We're talking about pokeach ivrim, matir asurim, chalulim chalulim, galu v'yadua. It's a physical attribute, a physical praise for everything there is in olam hazeh. It's using your guf. Then, says the Chayei Odom, you move on to the olam of the galgalim, of the universe, of the whole world as it is. You've moved on from olam hazeh. You moved on to the galgalim, Baruchi nafshi es Hashem, hashomayim mesaprim kavoid keil. Most of all, kuf mem ches, hallelu es Hashem in hashomayim b'amroimim, hallelu kol malochov, hallelu kol tzibokov, hallelu shemesh v'yareach. It's a higher form of praise. For that you use your nefesh, the nefesh. And that goes until Yishtabach. Then, says the Chayei Odom, you go into something called the olam of the Malachim, where they say praise, which is the olam of the Ruach, and Ruach is motivation and mind and thought. Yotzeh Mesholsim, Hashem Mesholsov, Kulam Oimdim, Mekablim Aleim. It's a much higher world. But you've moved on. You've gone to a higher realm. It's the olam of the Ruach. And then, when you've finished Krias Shema, you enter something called Lifnei HaKisei. You stand with your neshama, which is the higher point, and you talk to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Lifnei HaKisei Mamash. You've gone from stage to stage to stage. You can't possibly walk into shul and go straight to Shemone Esrai. You need the preamble. You need the entrance lobby. You need to move from stage to stage, and then you suddenly realize, where am I? Ani oimei itzu Yisrael, kumo be'ezras Yisrael. You're standing in front of Borei Olam. We get another glimpse of this in the Biur Halacha in Kuf Aleph. The Chofetz Chaim brings down on the topic of whether a person should daven or has to daven in Hebrew or not. And says the Chofetz Chaim there that the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah, when they sat down, they debated and they discussed every single letter, every single word, every single chibur oisios. And there were 120 of the most eminent and famous Talmidei Chachamim of the time. Many of them were the Nevi'im, Zechariah, Malachi, Haggai. And they composed, says the Chofetz Chaim, and in their composition were soidos, nisgovos, v'ne'elomos. Enormous soidos inside the tefillah, which we don't really follow all of them, but kamuvan, if what Hosea said, u'neshalmo forim sefoseinu, if we understand that concept fully, that we are replacing a kolban, which is korev el Hashem, so the purpose of tefillah is literally the words on our lips are instead of a kolban, and it has great, great depth, which we probably don't catch on to. But I'll give you a Vorspeis, an idea, which I saw in the writings of Rav Yitzchak Isaac Chover in Siach Yitzchak, just an idea, and you suddenly realize what's inside the composition of the Siddur. Says Rav Isaac, when Klal Yisrael traveled from Ramses until Gilgal, there were 42 stations. Al pi Hashem yachanu, al pi Hashem yisolu, v'shomru mishmeres Hashem. It was an incredible trip. It was a metamorphosis. They changed from being avdei paroi to literally ro'uyim. They were suitable and fitting to enter Eretz Yisrael as mamleches kohanim am segula. But it took 42 stations. We have no idea why they stayed in certain places longer than in others. Says Reb Isaac, it was necessary to stay in a certain place to bring the Shekhinah to that place, and then they moved on. They moved on to the next station, and as long as it took, and sometimes they were desolate, frightening places with wind and storm, and they had to stay there. And sometimes a beautiful, idyllic place in the middle of the Midbar, and they stayed overnight. The Shomru Mishmeres Hashem. But in 42 stations, they were completely changed. Anshe Knesset Agdoila used the number 42 as a launch from one station to the next. 42, as you know, is the Shem HaMefeirish. So Al Pi Hashem Yachanu means that the eventual, when they arrived and settled in Eretz Yisrael, they were all the time with Al Pi Hashem and settling. It was literally the Hashras Hashchina through the number 42. When you walk out of the street from your home and you walk into shul, we say 5 psukim. Ma toivoi halecha Yaakov Mishkin. What are these doing here? Hashem ahafti ma'on beisecha v'ani eshtacha ve'alhecha kodshecha. Rabbi say, there were 42 words in these 5 verses. They brought you in from the street into the mokum of Kedusha. Then you start praying, and you're into this olam of olam hazeh with your guf, and all of a sudden, in the middle of the prayer, apparently for no reason, comes Ona b'koyach, Rabbi Yonchuna ben Akona. Says Rabbi Isaac in the name of Rabbi Sadia Gaon that there were 42 stations. Each station is an elevation going from one to the next in the middle of the Kolbonos. So it's a launch to a higher level of Kedusha. 42 is a lift, an elevation, takes you in. How do you move from the olam of olam hazeh with your nefesh, with your guf, into the nefesh? Kaddish. Kaddish has 42 words. You go up a level into the olam of the Galgalion to pray. You then, there isn't time to go over everything, but Baruch She'amar begins with the base and ends with Melech Keichei Ho'elamim, the Mem, 42. And there was Sodos and Sodos inside the Siddur. It moves you on. Kaddish again, and then you come to the olam, as we mentioned, of the Ruach. You've moved up, you're a higher level. You olam of Krias Shema, and then you take 3 steps back, 3 steps forward. There are 42 words in the first bracha of Magen Avraham, of Avos. Literally, you are standing in front like a cocoon of Kedusha. You're right there, no movement, no sound, maybe a shakel, or that complete and perfect silence. You're oimed lifnei hashchina, and that stays until the very last verse, until Yihi Yud Rotzanim Reifi, which has 10 yuds and 42 letters. So there you have a whole setup there. You're inside this phenomenal mokum of Kedusha. And there's the sequence, just as a certain, almost like on the outside looking in, but you see the important relevance of what sequence is in prayer. The question is, of course, how on earth do you climb down? Take a moshel. One of the greatest problems in space technology, everybody knows, is coming back into the atmosphere after where you've been. You've been flying around in space, but you have to come back. And that's the treacherous moment, because it can go off, because you're entering into a different atmosphere here. When you come out of Shemone Esrai, how do you come out of it? How do you come down into olam hazeh? How do you move away from the Shekhinah? In their Chochmah, Anshe Knesset Hagdolah said that we should do something called Nefilas Hapayim. Nefilas Hapayim, as a makor, comes from Moshe and Aaron. In Parshas Korach, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided finally, Hibodlu mitoicho eda va'achale moiso kerega. I'm going to finish them off. I have no time for them. Vayiplu al pneihem. Moshe and Aaron, hearing the awesome impact of what the Oynish would mean, that they're going to be swallowed up, they fell on their faces, and ha'im kol ha'eda titzoif, they were terrified. Rabbeinu Bachai explains, what does it mean that they fell on their face? What is nefilas apayim? What's behind this enormous feeling of hispatlus? Says Rabbeinu Bachai, there were 3 terms to nefilas apayim. The first is the moira of the Shekhinah. Where have you been? Who have you been talking to? What have you been doing? That moira of the Shekhinah is a tremendous, it's a frightening feeling, and that's why they fell on their faces. Moshe and Aaron realized the impact of Hibodlu mitoicho eda, and the first was the moira, the fear, the terror. Secondly, says Rabbeinu Bachai, is the tsar and the hachnor, ani lo roi. Where I have been and just talking, I am not suitable to be there, and therefore they hid away. There was a hachnor. The Beis Yosef, in the Tur Beis Yosef, brings down in Simon Nun Hey, why is it that we stand with our feet together in Shemone Esrai? Mishnah Berurah brings down the time because Doimel Malochim, who stand there and they have 1 feet, right, 1 foot together. Oh, but the Beis Yosef brings down the Ma'ari Abuhav. And the Ma'ari Abuhav explains, is Ani lo yachol hazuz. I can't move without your help. It's you who are making me just make a step. Pshat in the Ma'ari Abuhav. That's the hachnor. Ani lo yachol. I can't move without you. That's the second clause in the Nefilas Hapayim. Hachnor. That's the Pshat in this week's Parsha, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu said Moshe said to Paroi, Ad mosai me'onte le'anois miponai. Says Rashi, the Hachnor, first time round, never ever had Paroi been told, how long are you hanging on for? The only taina which was made, Shalach ani ve'avduni, that's all that was said. Now there's a different taina. Where's the hachnor? Why are you not? Don't you realize who you're fighting with, who you're dealing with here? That was the taina made against Paroi, the hachnor. And that's the second clause. The third, says Rabbeinu Bachai, is shutting down all senses, nullifying any physical action. That's why we put our head down, close your eyes, and kimat, don't talk. It's like the complete shutdown of my power, because I realize where I've been, and that's called coming back into the atmosphere. That's called nefilas apayim. Tachanun is coming away. It's not just 3 steps back and 3 steps forward. Taking the lesson from Moshe and Aaron, and Shemone Esrai will masader this particular avodah of how you walk away. The moira of the Shechina, the tsar and the hachno, and shutting down all senses and all abilities. That's what it means. The embarrassment of where I've been standing. The question is, how do I express that? How am I going to say that out? What do I say? In their great chokhmah, and Shemone Esrai found one man who was best as an author, who could compose those words of Nefilas. We do not quote Moshe and Aaron. What we say is Perek Vov in Tehillim. Why from Tehillim? Vahi David, l'chol drochav maskil v'Hashem imoi. David HaMelech was credited as being a maskil. A maskil means, says the Gaon in Mishlei, he was very well thought out. He was successful in his thinking. Now, Yadua, the Perek Vov in Tehillim, is actually talking about David HaMelech. After the Chet of Bathsheba, he became ill. And he was sick, and then he recovered. Hashem al bi'abchos hicheni v'al b'chamos yasreini. Oh, but if you look at all the Meforshim, the Malbim, the Radak, the Ibn Ezra, they all say that this Perek of Perek Vov is not just talking about sickness. It's talking about the Tsar of Golus. The great pain which Klal Yisrael suffer in Golus, and that moira of the Shechina, and that Tsar and the Hachnor, and the nullification of any... I mean, lo yachol lazuz. I don't know what... In Golus, not just in illness. And it's true in his lifetime, but we see many Purakim in Tehillim, where David HaMelech, in his own lifetime, he's expressing a feeling, but in reality it's a nevuah. We see that quite clearly. Yud Gimel, Ad Ona, Tishkacheni Netzach. It's David HaMelech on the run as a fugitive. But we know quite well it's talking about the 4 periods of Golus. Perek Kof Beis is Ayeles HaShachar. That's talking about Purim. Kuf Mem Beis, Ba'Ma'or, Tefillah, is when he was running away from Shol, Yadua. But there's much more than that. It was also a nevuah. Koili El Hashem Ezok, Koili El Hashem Eschamon, is Klal Yisrael at the time when they're in Golus. So his great haskalah of David was that he was able to feel the pulse of Klal Yisrael, and he knew what they were going through. And therefore, this Perek, although it was talking about David at the time of his illness, is in reality the whole mood and the feeling of Hashem. Al ve'abcha tzorchicheni. Please, I beg you, do not rebuke me with your anger. Ve'al b'chamoscha siasreini. And don't challenge me and don't punish me with your anger. Choneini Hashem. In Golus, Choneini Hashem. Ki umlal oni. I'm feeble. I'm frail, I'm weak. This is the result of having said, with the guf, with the nefesh, with the ruach, with the neshama, of having stood there and had this enormous elevation, you walk away like Moshe and Aaron walked away with great hachnor, because they knew what was coming to Goyah Badosai. Ki umla la'oni, I'm so feeble. Rafa'eni Hashem ki nivhalu atzomai. My bones shudder. V'nafshi nivhala ma'oid. I'm overwhelmed. Ve'ato Hashem ad mosai. How long? How long is the Golus going to go on for? The Tsar of Golus. And Shemone Esrai, in the mood of Nefilas Hapayim, of Tachanun, gave us this tefillah to say, which would not just answer the way you move away from the Shechina, but more than that, it's a whole approach to a mindset for Golus. The submission, the tsar, the difficulties. I go for a haircut in Meir Shalim. Last time I went, it was about a few months ago, I went for a haircut. And in the middle of the haircut, the barber, I've been going for him for years, maybe 10, 15 years, I don't know. He suddenly started muttering under his breath. And he was talking gibberish. He was talking nonsense. Just muttering and muttering. And I answered him back, and he was just a normal, healthy, normal man. Just muttering under his breath. And I didn't know what was wrong. I came in another time, and I asked the other barber, Mayesh. He lost a son in a pigua. He lost his mind. My son just spent several weeks in hospital, on the other side of the ward, there were 2 beds in the ward. On the other side in Hadassah, in Ein Kerem, was a 92-year-old man. With a number on his arm, he went through Auschwitz. My son, a 21-year-old boy, started schmoozing with him and talking with him. I said to him, Auschwitz was terrible. A few weeks ago, I lost my only son in a pigua. 1 son, 92-year-old. Number on his arm, 1 son. The Tsar. Va'ato Hashem, ad Mosai. That's the cry. David, in his weakness, gave us words. This is Nefilas Apayim. About 6 months ago, I was on a bus, and the driver was impossible. He barked, and he stormed, and he was just rude to every person getting on. Why are you getting on? And he was just angry. I came forward and I said, what have these people done for you? I looked at his face, and he started crying. I lost a son in Gaza. I lost a son in Gaza. Rabbi Isai, I don't think there's anything which is more machriya as that it's impossible to judge anybody walking through the streets of Eretz Yisrael, because you have no idea what they've been through. You have no idea. These tragedies. Ki umlal oni. I'm so feeble. I'm so weak. It's not, this is the Nefilas Apayim. This is the Tachanun. This is what we're saying here. This is behind what we're asking for. Having said this, and this is the mood of the Hachno in front of the Shechina, Al bi'apcho sochicheni, ve'al b'chamos yasreini. According to the Ibn Ezra, the Radak, and the Malbim, it's all in the Goddess. It's talking about Goddess. If that's the case, why is it that as soon as we've finished, we come to these unique words? 6 times we say the words, Shomer Yisrael. Shomer Yisrael, Shemone Esrai, V'lo Yaved Yisrael. Why? Ha'omrim Shema Yisrael. What has that got to do with Nefilas Apayim? Why do we suddenly start talking about Shema Yisrael? 2nd verse. Shomer goyechot Shemone Esrai amechod v'al yeved hamiyachad shimcha Hashem Elokeinu. Why Shema? What has Shema got to do with the end of with the period of Golos that we're going through? What is there in Shema? Shomer goy kodesh Moshe Eres v'al yeved hamashalshim b'kudosh b'shalos kedushos. Why? Derech Agav, there are 42 words without the word Kodesh in Shemone Esrai. It's a whole year leader of the Shechina with us as a Shmira. But why do we emphasize the words of Krias Shema? What's Krias Shema got to do with this whole sequence in prayer? From olam hazeh to olam galgalim to olam malochim to olam of omed lifnei Shechina, that you walk away, and the Nefilas Apayim, and the Meira of the Shechina, and the Tsar, and then you come to the nullification of all senses. And the way you walk out of prayer is really Ashrei Mubarak Tziyana, just Tosefos at the end. But the end of the tefillah is by this Shomer Yisrael, V'anachnu lo neda. What is it here? And if you look carefully, this is not just the only place where we talk about Krias Shema. On Monday and Thursday, when we stand there with a longer Tachanun, we beg as follows: Avinu Malkeinu, im ein banu tzedakah u'ma'asim tovim, zechor lanu es habris avoseinu ve'edoseinu b'chol yom Hashem echad. There again. What is there in Shema? When you finish Tachanun, v'choin oin hamyachadim shimcha pamayim b'chol yom tomid v'oimim Shema. Why? Why Shema Yisrael all the time? What is there in Shema Yisrael, which is the Tachanun, which is the whole exit from prayer, from where we've been and our situation in Godless? What is there in Krias Shema? If you have a chance, it's kedai to learn through, to understand la'asid lovo, what's going to be here. Yeshaya Perek Samach, Perek 60. Kumi oiri, kiva oireich, uchovoid Hashem olayich nigla. The Geula Shlema. There's a pasuk in the middle of Perek Samach. Beautiful nigun, Hillel Palei. Se'i saviv einayich urei. Ra'i kulam nikbetzu va'ulach bonarayich. They gather together. Ubenaisayich outsad te'omelna. What is this pasuk saying here? Se'i saviv einayich urei. What is going to happen at the time of the Geula Shlema? It's a passage I'd like to read out to you of what, hopefully in our time, we will see will happen at the time of the actual Geula and the Kibbutz Goliath of everything. In the Yalkut. Ba'ois Shah, maybe HaKadosh Baruch Hu Eliyahu u'Mashiach u'tzluchis shel Shemone biyadeihem. Please imagine the scene. Eliyahu, Mashiach, holding oil, u'makelechem biyadechem, and sticks in their hand. V'nikbotzim kol Yisrael lifneihem. All of klal Yisrael will come together. Ushchina lifneihem, u'neviim me'achareihem, v'toira mi'yaminom, u'malachei hasharetz mismoilom. This is something like Matan Torah, I would suggest. An incredible final retribution. U'malichim oisam el emek Yehoshaphat. Next to where Avshalom is. That's called Emek Yehoshaphat. Yehoshaphat is Lashon Mishpat. This is where the final showdown will take place. V'nikbotzim HaKadosh Baruch Hu elilei ha'umas ha'olam. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will pull together at this point all the Oivdei Avodah Zarah from India, from Pakistan, from the church, whatever form of Avodah Zarah, they will all be brought there. V'noistim bahem ruach u'neshama. And they're all given life. All of these forms of Avodah Zarah will come alive as power. They will be given ruach and neshama. V'oimer, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu will say to you, now, oiver al gesher gehinnom. Please just walk, make a procession, and walk right past the bridge which goes to Gehinnom. V'oivrim, and they'll walk, they'll be forced to walk. V'keven shemagiyim sham, and once they arrive there, yihye lifneihem kechut. It'll be like walking on a tightrope. V'noiflim l'Gehinnom, and they will fall into Gehinnom with all their ruach and neshama. It will be the final showdown of every form of Avodah Zarah. Umiyad Yisrael misyorim. All of klal Yisrael who are standing there will be terrified. V'oimim lefanav Ribbono shel olam toima kasher osisa im elu taseh imanu. Is our end going to be in the same way? Are you going to finish us in the same way? Listen to these words. Oimar lahem mi atem. Who are you? Who are you? Here's the showdown. All the Avodah Zarah have been ruined, and now klal Yisrael are standing there terrified. Are we next? And Conscious says, and who are you? Oimrim lanu, anachnu amcha v'nachal asecha. Yisrael, we're klal Yisrael. Oimrim lahem, mi meid. Who can testify that you are Jews? Prove it. Avram. Kairel Avram. Ribbono calls out to Avram, Meid atem shehem ami? Can you testify this is really my people? And ani Elohehem? Ribbono shel olam. Avram multaina, but you said, Begames hagoy asher avoidu don anochi, and these will be saved. Omer lahem mi meid yoseh. Doesn't prove to me anything. Avram's taina and testimony will be worthless. Omer lo Yitzchak can come forward. Koireh le Yitzchak. Omer lo meid ato, can you testify? This is a Jew. These are Jewish people. Shehem amiv Elohem. Omer lefon Ribono shel olam. Lo koch amarto ki l'chol l'zaucha etenes kol haaretzos ha'elu. These are the nations who you said you will give the land to. Rabbi said, what's behind this? If you make a taina in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu la'osid lovoi, the land of Israel is ours. It's our land. No, you promised it to our land. That's what Yitzchak said. Omer lahem mi meid yoseh. That doesn't prove to me anything. You're living in the land. Who says that's Jewish people? Omer lo Yaakov can come forward. Koireh le Yaakov. Omer meid ato. Can you say anything about the Jewish nation? Omer lahem Ribono shel olam lo kach amarto lo yeh lecha Elohim acherim. But this is your nation. V'heim oimrim. And Klal Yisrael now respond. Shema Yisrael. Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Ba'oisa shomer, oiver HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'fneihem. That is called pressing the right button. Once you say Shema Yisrael, Vayav Malachim b'fneihem, Ba'oisa shomer, maybe HaKadosh Baruch Hu Torah, Umanicha b'cheikoi, Umavik Zivon Shel Yisrael Misoif ha'olam ad soifai. Now the enormous honor and pride of Klal Yisrael will shine in all the nations of the world. But they had to say Shema Yisrael. The Medrash carries on and explains how Klal Yisrael, Moshe Rabbeinu, Gabriel, Yeshaya all come forward and say, this will arouse tremendous jealousy. The kinna of the nations will be consuming. We'll never survive this kinna. And the Kadosh Baruch Hu turns around and says, please do not worry. And Paro and Egypt all come forward and say, we recognized you, Hashem. And the Kadosh Baruch Hu turns around and says, Ken. The Lashon here is, but you didn't say twice a day, Shema Yisrael. The identity is not bris milah. The identity is not enough to say, I put on tefillin. And you know you're there. The identity of a Jew is not because I'm born by a Jewish mother. L'osid lovai, the identity is one. Can you declare with a peh mole, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad? Can you say that with full sincerity and devotion that you know what yours? That, in the final analysis, is mi atem. Who are you? That's why first words in every day, almost first words, Shema Yisrael. Last words out as you fall asleep, Shema Yisrael. First words of a child, we're told, in a lifetime, Shema Yisrael. What's the passport into olam ha'emes? If you're fortunate, Shema Yisrael. Not my checkbook, not my stockers. What you go at is Shema Yisrael. Last words before the gates close on Yom Kippur, Shema Yisrael. Shema Yisrael is the final reckoning of the testimony of who we really are. The power of our emunah, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Maybe that's why Anshe Knesset Hagdolah told us, in these critical moments, you walked away from the Shechina and you had the Filas Apayim. Shomer Yisrael, protect HaKadosh Baruch Hu, ha'oimrim Shema Yisrael. That's a lower level. You just say it. Ha'oimrim Shema Yisrael. That already identifies you. Nay, there's a higher darga. Shomer Goy Echad. There's one nation who are Shemone Esrai Am Echad, Hameyachadim Shimcha Hashem Elokeinu. That's much higher than just Oimrim Shema Yisrael. To be Miyached HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a much higher level than Oimrim Shema Yisrael. It's much higher. The Rambam in Hilchos Sefer HaMitzvahs, mitzvah base, is that saying Shema Yisrael, I never really realized this, I saw this Lashon in the Rambam, a friend in Koilel showed it to me. The Lashon of Shema Yisrael is Malchus Shamayim. It's not just this Malchus, and you have something called Yichud Hashem. Yichud Hashem, says the Rambam in mitzvah base, is in reality Malchus Shamayim. That's what Shema Yisrael is. It's the koyach of Shema Yisrael. That has 42 words in it. Sorry, that's the number 2. Number 3 is, what did you achieve and accomplish when you said Shema Yisrael? Shomer goy kodosh, you're a goy kodosh. There's oimrim, there's meyachadim, but Shomer goy kodosh, v'loyab hamashalshim b'sholosh kedushos. Now, as you know, Yadua, the Lashon Kadosh, 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 we say it in Avodat Zion, refers to being Mekadesh HaKadosh Baruch Hu in 3 worlds. Kaddish le'olam, Kaddish b'shmei meroima, ilah beis shchintei. That's Kedusha b'meroimim. So the first Kadosh is talking about Kadosh ba'elyonim, in the universe, in the galaxies, in the whole world, he's Kadosh. Kaddish al-ara oivad gevurte is on the land where we live. And the third one is Kaddish le'olam, olmaya, in time, in all the worlds, from the beginning of time to the end of time. But perhaps that's only number 3. You don't get to the schus of being Meshalshim B'Sholas Kedushas L'Kadosh until you graduated from Oimrim Shema Yisrael, Hamiyachadim Shema Yisrael, after Hamiyachadim Hameshalshim B'Sholas Kedushas. It's much, much higher, because the koyach of Miyachid HaKadosh Baruch Hu in Shema Yisrael is the darga of Meshalshim B'Sholas Kedushas. That's the koyach of the Shmira. And therefore, when we say Shomer Yisrael 6 times, that is our insurance policy. That is our life survival until the final Geula in Yehoshaphat, in Emek Yehoshaphat. And if we prepare for that, not only by saying Shema in the morning and at night when you go to bed, but even in the Tachanun itself, the outcome of Tachanun, of Moira of the Shechina, and Tsar and Hachnor, and finally nullifying all senses. When you wake up and you lift your head up and you're saying, how am I going to survive the ultimate safety and protection of klal Yisrael? Here it is. Shomer Yisrael, to say Shema Yisrael, to be Miyachid HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the outcome is that you actually reach a point of Kedusha, Meshalshim B'Sholosh. I would like to give you depth, to take you further, because this point, the implication, is much, much greater than perhaps we might have realized. What does it mean, saying Shema Yisrael, as the ultimate safety and protection of klal Yisrael? It's a little bit of a digression, but I think the points will go much, much deeper. The Ramban in Bereshis, on 3 occasions, by Avram, by Yitzchak, and by Yaakov, explains that each of the Golas, that Avram, as you know, went down to Mitzrayim with Sarah, Yitzchak went to Plishtim with Rivka, and Yaakov Avinu went down to Mitzrayim. Maisa Avos similar bonim, says the Ramban, are all a forerunner of the 3 main periods of Golas. When Avraham Avinu went down to Mitzrayim, that was the beginning and the role model for klal Yisrael in Mitzrayim. There isn't time to go into it. If you want to look it up, it's in Parshas Lech Lecha, Perek Yud, Pasuk Yud Beis. The Ramban says. When Yitzchak went to Plishtim, that's the forerunner of Golas Bovel. There wasn't really an Inui in Bovel, in Plishtim. It was just an embarrassment. Yitzchak was in Plishtim, and then he left and came back to Eretz Yisrael. Klal Yisrael in Bovel had great authority, had great dignity there. You'll see it's in Parshas Toldos, Perek Kof Vov, Posuk Aleph. There the Ramban says, when Yaakov Avinu went down to Mitzrayim, Yaakov Avinu actually believed that this is the final Geula. That this is and the Ramban in the beginning of Parshas Vayechi explains whatever happened when Yaakov went down to Mitzrayim. He gives, if you look, 7 causes, 7 features of when Yaakov went down to Mitzrayim is exactly the runner and the rehearsal for the Geula Shlema. Meaning, Yaakov went down to Mitzrayim because of a famine. Klal Yisrael, if you remember with the Romans, they were starving hungry in Yerushalayim. Beginning, that's how it began. Yaakov Avinu never meant to stay more than a few months in Mitzrayim just to get food. He ended up staying there and dying there. Klal Yisrael had no idea how long Golus Edom would be. It's still going on. Says the Ramban, it took so long that they dried up as if they died there in Golus Edom. As if they dried up. It's like dying. When Yaakov Avinu was brought back to Eretz Yisrael, he was given tremendous honor. Says the Ramban, that's what's going to happen. We just saw when the final Geula from the Geula Shlema comes about, like they brought the crowns and they put them on Yaakov when Yaakov came back to Eretz Yisrael to be buried, so will be all the honor of Klal Yisrael at the final showdown. That's the Ziv Ashchina, which we just saw, when the Geula Shlema comes about. And all the terms are the same. And therefore, when Yaakov Avinu went down to Mitzrayim, in his mind, it was the eventual Geula which was going to come about. It was not just going down for the food. He realized that this, and the Ramban says it before, and so does Rabbeinu Bachai, that this was exactly, he believed from now would come the final Geula Shlema. Now is not the time to go into it, but there's a Zohar in Parshas Pinchas, and the Zohar brings down that when they left Mitzrayim, and they sang Oz Yoshir, to the Eimai v'sito Eimai b'han nachaloscha, mochoin b'shivtecha poralto Hashem, mikdosh Hashem, koinenu yodecha. He believed this was the final Geula. And the Zohar brings down in the name of Eliyahu Hanavi, a chutzpahdik, an arrogant goy stormed into Rabbi Eliezer. It's in the beginning of Parshas Pinchas in the Zohar. Stormed into Rabbi Eliezer and said, "You have no future. Klal Yisrael is finished." And Rabbi Eliezer asked Eliyahu Hanavi to please go and ask in Shemayim what's the response. And the Zohar brings down that Eliyahu came back and told Rabbi Eliezer, this pasuk, Mikdash Hashem Koinenu Yodecha, is supposed to be the Geula Shlema. So when they left Eretz Yisrael, Mitzrayim, they were coming into the final Geula, and the Ramban says it Mefush. Chet HaMeraglim, and Erev Rav, and Chet HaEgel ruined things. And that was the plan. If that's the case, then look carefully, how did Yaakov Avinu go down to Mitzrayim? In Perek Mem Vov, he went down to Mitzrayim with 2 plans ahead of him, 2 formulas for coming out of Mitzrayim. First, Yehuda Shalach Lefonov. And that, of course, as we know, is the Maisa of a Simon Labonim of every period of Golus since the time of Yavne. Ten li Yavne v'chachomeha, a Mokum Torah. Al Smach, Yehuda was sent down, and that's what you first must have. First things, you must have a Beis HaMedrash, Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel, Yehuda Nossi. Jump a few thousand years. The Ramban, as soon as he came to Akko, and then went to Eretz Yisrael, Yerushalayim, every place. Let's go to the last 100 years. The Lubavitcher Rebbe, when he went to America, Satmar Rebbe, Bobova Rebbe, Rabbi Aaron Kotler, Torah. A mokum of Torah is the survival of Klal Yisrael. Where does it come from? It comes from Yehuda Shalach Lefanov. That's the first point of survival. On the assumption this is the final Golus, and we're going into the Krias Shema. Now, he meets Yosef. Yosef collapsed on his father's head. Vayefch al tzavarav oid. But Yaakov did not. Yaakov kara Krias Shema. Maybe that's why. Why did he read Krias Shema? Because this is what klal Yisrael will need when they're leaving the Golus, because this is the final tikkun, the emunah of klal Yisrael. And that's why on the doorstep of Mitzrayim, in Goshen, look carefully, Vayavoyu outsa Goshen, in Mitzrayim, Vayesa Yosef Merkavta, Vayera Elav Vayipal al Ponov, and Yaakov said, Krias Shema. Why Krias Shema? Because that's the final analysis, Krias Shema. Perhaps that's the reason why when the children were standing by the bedside as Yaakov was about to die, they screamed out, Shema Yisrael. Why Shema Yisrael? Because Shema Yisrael is the final identity of who we are. That's the label. First words in, last words out. That's the passport. That's the identity. And that's the shmira of klal Yisrael. And that's why Anshe Knesset Agdola kept on saying over and over in Tachanun, which the way we were understanding it in the Malbim and the Radak, that's the reason. The reason is because Shema Yisrael is the main identity of a Jew. Wonderful that he puts on tefillin, that he gives tzedakah, that he learns Torah. Of course. But at the end of the day, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Umi atem, so who are you? You live in Eretz, the Zeloma speak in Eretz Yisrael. And it's not enough if you just turn around to tell them and say, I judged out the other nations. That's Avraham, Yitzchak, their taina didn't work. So only when they said, Ba'oisa shor, says the Yalkut, when they suddenly said, Shema Yisrael, that was pressing the button. And that was the identity. And that's why we keep on saying Shema Yisrael. And that's why it's the mitzvah saseh in the Rambam. In mitzvah saseh, chiyuv liyachet HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And there were dargas. There's a darga of a shomer, of an omer, of a meyached, a meshashim b'shudos HaKadosh. There are dargas of how far this edus goes. What is the power behind this edus? You can't possibly say, I hope, Ezras Hashem, after this year, you can't just chaplap Tachanun. Because Tachanun is the whole exit station of moving away from the Shekhinah. And that's the ultimate safety and protection of klal Yisrael. That's really where it all comes from. It's the koyach of Shema Yisrael. Remember years ago in London, I was once taking Rav Brevda, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, across London, and he was sitting next to me in the car, and his children were in the back seat, playing around on the back seat, playing a game. And we were driving through factories in South London, and all of a sudden in the back of the car, it was completely quiet. And they were laughing and giggling, and laughing their heads off. So I turned around to the Rav and I said to him, is everything okay? What's happening at the back? So I said, yeah, they're playing a game, and you're there, playing a game, kids playing. It was completely silent. I remember there was a child of 2.5, 3, maybe 3. There was a boy of about 7, a girl, the children of Abevda. They were little kids at the time. It was completely silent. And then, as we were going through all these factories, the 3-year-old, I think maybe 2 or 3, turned around and said, Tati! We are now traveling through an industrial complex where they manufacture petrochemicals. A 3-year-old. And it was very funny. It was extremely humorous. This 3-year-old had no idea what she was talking about. And like you tell kids, say this, say this, say that, say that. And kids say it. And it was very humorous because this little kid had no idea what she was talking about. Here's an industrial complex manufacturing. The kid had no idea, but it sounded very humorous at the time. I don't know why. I had a good laugh. About 3 weeks later, maybe a month later or something, these words suddenly came back to me in the middle of davening. I don't know where it was, but I suddenly thought to myself, I hope they're not laughing at me in Shamayim. There he goes again. He's saying words, he has no idea what he's talking about. I hope they're not laughing at me in Shemayim when I say these words. When I was preparing the Shir, it came to me this. Here he goes again. You gallop through, for some reason, there are 42 words in it. It's the whole shayresh of all the shmira of klal Yisrael is in these words. There he goes again, saying it when he has no idea. I thought to myself, how embarrassing. This is the ultimate safety and protection of klal Yisrael after all the sequence of prayer that one has gone through. That's it. There isn't time to go into it now, but his damnut, really what we're saying here is Reb Chaim Volozhin in Nefesh HaChaim, Shah Gimel Pevek Yud Beis. When Reb Chaim brings down the most beautiful skula niflo in klal Yisrael. And Reb Chaim explains that at the end of the day, when a person lo yaleinu chas v'sholom is in a moment of danger, the greatest possible security is to be miyached Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. It's called a skula niflo. It's an incredible skula. The power of saying Shema Yisrael with great kavanah. If you know a little bit in the history, when the Brisker Rav escaped with his few children and went to Vilna, he had to get to Bialystok, and he was hiding in the back of a wagon, and the Nazis were inspecting every single wagon, and the Brisker Rav turned around to the children and he said to them, from the beginning until the end of this trip, think of one thing, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, and the driver of the wagon on the horses lost his way. And they went through, Miller writes it in his book on the Brisker Rav, they went through the headquarters of Gestapo in a place called Malchin. They passed through, and the place had been made 2 days earlier, Judenrein. They'd wiped out every single Jew, and they lost their way, and they went right through, and it was after curfew time. And the Brisker Rav turned around to us and said, think of one thing, Shema, just don't stop. Hashem Elokeinu, that's the skula niflo, and he used, it's his Zayda, the Chaim Balash, the Mishpacha, he used the skula of the Brisker Rav, and he was saved. And he said, everything was perfect until they reached the border. And then when they saw the border ahead, as soon as they got out of the wagon, German soldiers came over to them and attacked them. And the Brisker Rav said, at that moment, we had stopped thinking of Shema Yisrael. We had taken it out of our minds. So, and Miller writes it beautifully in his, I think it's the first volume of the Brisker Rav. He describes the koyach skula of it. I once said it in a shir in Har Nof, and an Avreich came to me afterwards, and he said to me that he was traveling down, if you know Nissim, and you go into Har Nof, you go down the long slip road, and you come all the way down to Chai Taib at the bottom, and you turn left. It's a very sharp turn left. Down Nissim, and then you turn left into Chai Taib. And he said he was driving with his wife, and the baby was on the back seat. And as they turned the corner, the back door opened, and the baby fell out of the car. And there was all traffic on the road. And as they turned the corner, and the baby fell out of the car, he told me afterwards, his wife screamed out, Shema Yisrael. She screamed out with full knowledge, screamed out. And the baby was on the middle of the road, fell out of the car, and they immediately went to Shaarei Tzedek, to the hospital, and they turned around and they said, you literally had a nace. This child is completely, not even scratched, nothing. A little baby fell out of the car. It's a skula niflo. Zilberstein advocated to Rothschild, Dr. Rothschild in Ma'anei Yeshua. Every woman who goes into the maternity ward there says Shema Yisrael, skula niflo. And that is why Anshe Knesset Hagdolah put it in here. That's what it is. Shomer is one level. Miyachadim is higher. Shema Shemekudosh is even higher, a higher level. But there's one nakuda which we must add, which I think is part of this Tachanun. There's a certain mindset which is needed in this whole concept of Nefilas Hapayim. It's not enough just the Ki'um La'oni, the Hachnor and the Hashpor. There is also, besides the Krias Shema, Ribono Shel Olam, Va'anachnu lo neida ma na'aseh, ki olecho eineinu. We do not know what to do. Lo yodim. This is an expression of, I'm completely in your hands. Zechor rachamecha. Yehi chastocha Hashem aleinu. This ideology, the Rav mentioned it 2 weeks ago here in the shul, this idea of two parallel lines running together. On the one hand, you see the enormous, there's a bechira that the person has. On the other hand, HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows the hashgacha pratis of everything, and they seem to not make sense. So the Rav explained, you're right, they do not make sense. V'anachnu lo neder, we do not understand it. We're not able to understand it clearly. And the Rav explained it beautifully a few weeks ago here in the shul. Oh, but this v'anachnu lo neder, we don't know. It's not in our hands. And if you look carefully throughout the writings of David HaMelech, when he discusses the periods of Golus, it's late and there isn't time to go into it now, but in basically, Perek Kuf Kof Daled is Lulei Hashem Shahai Aleinu Bukum Aleimu Odom. When David HaMelech says, the Reb Chaim Vital said in the name of the Arizal, that this Perek is talking about Golus Yishmael, Nafshenu Ketzipor Nimlato Mipach Hayokshim. Our lives are like a bird caught in a trap by a hunter. We don't know. We don't have ability to work out how everything will work out and how it will be. That's Golus Yishmael. In Kuf Mem Beis, again, David HaMelech uses the word Koili El Hashem Ezok Behisatef Olai Nafshi Beyato Yodato Nesibasi Bo'oyach Zu Tomnu Pach Li. The same word is used again. Pach is a trap. Pach is a dead end. Pach is an inability, complete inability to work out what is going to do and how we should handle this situation. Va'anachnu lo neda ma na'aseh. We don't have the answers. We say Shema, we meyached Shema, but no one can come forward, as the Rav had mentioned, but no one can come forward and say, I have the solution. That's what Klal Yisrael said in the Parsha today. They said, "Anachnu lo neda ma na'avod." We don't know how to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I don't know what He'll ask from us. Maybe it's the same concept here. Anachnu lo neda. We can't give a policy. The policy is only we beg. Misratze berachamim umispayes besachanunim. Hisratze vispayes ledoir oni ki ein oizer. That's full submission, full hachnor. I do not know. I haven't got answers. Ovinu malkeinu, choneinu v'aneinu, ki ein bonu ma'asim. That's a mindset. That's enormous humility. It's the ability to say, I close down, or I put my hand on my head on my hand, I put my head down, I'm lo yochol. I don't know. I'm fully in your hands. That's David HaMelech, the masculine, ki umlal oni, and that's the mindset which is needed in order to achieve this level of full safety and protection. We're in His hands and not in our... Of course we protect ourselves. Of course one must be careful. But that's not the ultimate safety. The ultimate safety is not Tzahal, is not the United Nations, Chas v'Shalom. It is nothing else but the ability of Shema Yisrael and what Shema Yisrael entails. That's behind it. Maybe... That's why if we go back to the beginning of prayer every day, when we start every day, and we say as follows, nothing else, but this is how it all begins. We turn around and say, Ma noim alefonecha. Ma kocheinu, ma gvuroseinu, ma noim alefonecha. Halo kol hagiborim ka'ein lefonecha. Aval anachnu amcho b'nei v'risecha. We are Ashreinu Matoiv Chalkeinu Manoim Garaleinu V'Oimrim Pamayim B'Chol Yom Shema Yisrael. There's the Hanova right from the very beginning. It's Shema Yisrael, the beginning of prayer. That's what it is. We don't have the power to see what's going. And we have to reach that level of emunah to realize that it's totally in His hands. And our hachno, that is Nefilas Hapayim. And that is the power of Tachanun. It's the ability to shut down completely. I have my bank account, I have my lawyer, I have the army, but no. When it comes to it, the ultimate is, of course I make measures, I make hishtadlus, At the end of the day, it's the power of Shema Yisrael, and that's what the Yalkut is saying will happen at Emet Yehoshaphat. Mi atem, what are you? It's not enough if you learn Daf HaYomi. It's not enough if you just give tzedakah. It's not enough. The real Mi atem is the Shema Yisrael, that real level of emunah which we're supposed to reach for. I suppose if we do that, I don't know, maybe we can jump ahead to breakfast. After you've finished davening in the morning, and you finished eating breakfast, and maybe I kept on thinking it the whole of Shabbos, as we were benching over Shabbos. If you reach that point, and you can afterwards come home and have breakfast, with those koiches, b'ma'olam yilamdu aleihem, in Shamayim, yilamdu aleihem v'aleinu zchus, there'll be melamed zchus on us in Shamayim, shetehela mishmeres shamayim. It really is. Here it is, 6 times shomer Yisrael. Where's the mishmeres? The mishmeres shamayim, v'nisa v'rocha me'es Hashem, tzedakah elokei yishenu, and we and all our families, v'ninsa chein, v'seichel tov, v'nei Elokim, v'odom, amen.
Rabbi Yohanan Alperin visits the USA and Canada several times a year, giving shiurim and lectures to various communities and schools, usually during Elul, before or after Hanukkah and Purim, and around the time of Shavuos. If there is a different time of the year that you would prefer, please let us know. We will be happy to send you information and references. Contact information for Rabbi Alperin in New York, it's 646-502-6798, or in Israel, 02-652-0864. He can also be reached at email address alperin@bezekint.net, or you can also contact Denny Simon, U.S. number 516-489-5218, or in Israel 054-662-8140, and he could also be reached at email address simon32@aol.com.